Welcome back to this webinar series. This is webinar 3 of 6 that we're producing at the moment purely for health and fitness for women. So this is the third one. So if you've been watching the previous ones, welcome back. If you're new to this, hi, my name's Mark. I'm going to be taking you through this presentation today. So today we're going to be covering how to optimize your training, a little bit of nutrition around your menstrual cycle, if you're a biological female. So before we start, just in case you have never met me, my name is Mark Fox. I've been a trainer for a very long time, longer than I think a lot of personal trainers have been alive. I think my time in the industry is probably longer than their date of births. I teach NVQs in personal training. I've done this around the world. I've written courses. I'm still doing this to this day, but I also have a select few clients that I still train. And I've been doing this for as you can see, for decades. I'm a massive nerd, like humongous nerd. You can probably tell maybe by the blurred out things behind me. But my other passion is fitness, is health and fitness. And just a little bit more about me. I've got 3 dogs, 3 lovely dogs. I can't seem to say no to my wife, so hopefully it stops at 3. But every time I deliver these presentations, I always give a little bit of my personality across as well, who I am. So that's me. You're in a safe place. Everything that's going to be coming out of my mouth today is going to be scientific based. It's going to be experience based as well, working with countless women through the years, 25 years of being in the industry. So first off, what we will be covering today. So we're going to be looking at like the benefits of looking at your cycle and then adjusting your training, your nutrition around your menstrual cycle, those highs and lows, almost like riding the wave. We're also going to be looking at the phases of the cycle, so a little bit of science. It's amazing how many clients and how many women I speak to that don't understand what goes through their body each month. You think your menstrual cycle is a monthly thing for a majority of people, that around about 28-day cycle. A lot of women don't fully understand this. Sometimes I think, why am I teaching this? I'm a guy, a biological guy. I've got different parts, haven't I? I've got Willie, really. Why should I be like talking about this? I think the difference is that I can't take it for granted. I have to learn loads. I can't be empathetic. I can be sympathetic to women, but I've got to learn probably above and beyond maybe what women would learn, because I don't have those parts. So I really like I need to learn a little bit more. So I find it amazing that I know quite a lot more than most women, even though the women go through that. I think maybe you take it for granted. That's one thing that I've been told by many clients and many women. So we're going to go through those phases. We'll look at like why tracking it can make a huge difference. Understanding where you are in your cycle, like physiologically, as also mentally, it will help you. It'll make you feel less demotivated and more motivated. And then obviously tips of how to deal with various stages of that cycle so we can almost ride the wave. And just at the back end, we're going to cover some nutrition tips as well. Now, the nutrition tips, we're not going to spend too much time on that, because the next webinar is going to be about nutrition specifically for women. So hopefully today you'll learn quite a lot if you don't know anything yet about your menstrual cycle and how it affects your training. Really, that's how we're really wording this and going through the presentation is how it's going to affect your training, how it's going to affect nutrition as well as being a woman. As a man, we don't have to deal with this. It's fairly constant throughout the month, so it's quite easy for us. But certainly for women, certainly from what I've learned and what I've learned from doing courses and reading books, as well as speaking to my female clients, you go through hell sometimes during the month. So this is the things that we're going to cover today. So first off, why adjust your training around your cycles? So like I led with there, like as a man, we don't really have to deal with this. Something like our hormone levels stay constant throughout the month. We don't really have to think about it. as long as we go to bed on time, as long as we eat well and we don't drink too much and we keep hydrated, we're going to feel fairly constantly the same sort of energy levels. Yes, stress and other factors will come into play there, and as we age, things get harder. But generally, as a guy, I've got it easy. Whereas for a woman, because you go through that 28 on average day cycle, it can be really difficult to keep on top of things, because mentally you might have some brain fog, like physically you might be feeling tired, you might feel more achy, you might be bloated. All these things you got to factor in as you go through the month of training, around about a month. Understanding these things means that you can maximize when you're going to feel like Wonder Woman, and then you can sort of minimize some of those risks by taking it easy on certain parts of the month. So when we go through these cycles, we realize that there's a couple of weeks where you're going to feel superhuman, even a couple of days where you're going to feel literally like a superhero, like Wonder Woman, and there'll be a couple of weeks potentially you're not going to feel like 100%. And then this leads on to motivation, leads on to a mental thing, is that I find that when I've trained women over the years, they beat themselves up a lot more than men. I find it could be a sweeping statement, but it's my anecdotal evidence is that women seem to like take things to heart more so for themselves. So they're really, really hard on themselves. They're doing an amazing job with life, with exercise, but a small setback, it tends to become much, much more than what it really is, compared to really training guys. Training like guys are just walking arrogant idiots, really. So if you've got an understanding, I think, of a woman, as you being a woman, you understanding that like there is some highs and lows during the month. You can't always be 100%, and then just give yourself a little bit of a break can really make some like huge differences to your training and to keep yourself motivated as well. So these are some of the reasons what I'm seeing, that I've seen with clients, that I think is why we should, or women should, I know I keep saying the word we, I'm meaning yourselves, the women that are watching back now, should really adjust your training and try and monitor your training. Okay, so a little bit of science, just in case you don't know this. Today we're going to be talking about two female hormones. We're going to be talking about estrogen, which you may have heard of, and progesterone, which maybe you might not have heard of. These two, and there is other hormones in the play, but these two have major influences on on a woman's body throughout that 28-day cycle of the menstrual cycle. So estrogen itself is more of the energizing hormone, promoting tissue growth, like growing muscles growth. It's also that high energy, you're going to feel top of your game hormone, whereas progesterone is more stabilizes, calms things down. It's more the relaxing hormone. So as we've got highs and lows of each type of these hormones, you may feel different. And that's what we're going to be talking about today when we go through these distinctive cycles. So what are the cycles? So I've divided these up into four cycles throughout that 28-day period. Just remember, women could have a longer cycle, they could have a shorter cycle during the month. Lots of things are going to be contributing factors: genetics, age, could be stress levels, could be nutrition. If you're in a low calorie diet, it could affect your monthly cycle. But when we talk about these days in like 1 to 5 and 5 to 14, we're thinking around about that 28-day cycle. And the reason why there is a range is that everyone is different, so it's not going to be exactly. So when we do talk about tracking a cycle, that's why it's really, really important, because you need to understand for you individually where you are at that point of each phase. So the first phase is the menstrual cycle. This is where obviously you're going to be having your period. Yeah, so you bleeding really, where for some women feel like hell, and we'll go through some of the reasons why you don't feel the best during these 1 to 5 days. Then we've got the first phase, like the major phase called the follicular phase. Some where you read in books, maybe you go to the GP. Sometimes they just give 2 cycles, like follicular, and then the last one, the luteal. and then they'll include the menstrual part and then the ovulation part in that follicular phase. But I've divided up into 4 different distinctive phases because you will feel probably quite different in each of these phases. So the next one is the follicular. This is more the high energy, great for strength training, great for like intensive work. You're going to feel a lot stronger. You're going to feel, I suppose, more like you. Next one, which is probably the short, or is the shortest part of these phases, the ovulation. So you're going to have 1 to 2 days, so 24, 48 hours worth of peak performance. You're going to feel amazing, okay, for this phase. This is where one day you're going to the gym and you feel like Wonder Woman. You will feel amazing and you'll be hitting PBs all over the place. And then maybe the next time you come in, you think, what happened? And this could be because everything's like aligned, all the moons have aligned, your hormones are at the right levels. Potentially, if you slept well, you've eaten well, this could be the time to peak. And then lastly, this is more the lower phase, the back end of your cycle, the luteal phase, where things start to slow down. You may still feel like you can train hard, but maybe your body's almost working against you. And then as we come through the back end of it, that's when you're going to start to experience more PMS symptoms, because we're coming back into that having your period, starting your period. Yeah. So we're going to go through each of these cycles, each of these phases, just to give you an understanding of what your body's probably feeling like. And as I'm talking through these, as you're seeing what you can see on the slides, you probably might have these, oh, I get that, right, I understand now. And this comes back to that mental part of what I'm talking about today, this presentation, is that try not to be too hard on yourself, because actually there's nothing you can do about it. You can't, I mean, there is ways of affecting your monthly cycle, but really this is just a natural thing that goes, that 50% of the population has to go through every month. So the menstrual phase. So this is your period, what usually most people will call the period. 1 to 5 days. So again, people are different. It could be longer, could be all the way up to maybe 7 to 10 days, but generally 1 to 5 days. I think most women I've worked with has never been really shorter than maybe 3 days, but obviously everyone's different. So each slide you'll see, it's a little bit death by PowerPoint with all the writing that's on there. But the reason why I've done that is that I'm going to give you access to these slides, so you can almost take this to one side and read over them again, like almost like a mini manual, and take some notes. I'm not going to go through all this word for word. I'm just going to explain the slide and move on to the next one, but you can still come back to this and utilize it. So what we've got is what's happening, the effects on the body, and then the training and adjustments. Okay, so how to manipulate your training, your workout program, to stride through that monthly cycle, stride through each phase and feel like you're winning rather than feel like you're a failure and feel like you're losing. So the first part, what's happening? So there is a hormonal shift. So estrogen and progesterone, they're at the lowest level, so both are quite low. Obviously, you are bleeding, so potentially you're going to get cramping, you're going to feel quite fatigued. For some women, if they've got a heavy bleed, you may even have the same or similar sort of symptoms as someone who's got anemia. So someone who's low iron. So taking iron supplements or potentially having iron-rich foods, which I would normally recommend, might be a beneficial element to think about if you're feeling quite low during this period. You're going to feel like you're cramping up. I think the bleeding is going to make you feel that way. You're going to feel quite bloated due to electrolyte levels are being affected. Potentially, if your body's not producing more red blood cells, you are going to feel really quite fatigued. You're going to have mood swings. You're not going to feel amazing, basically. You're going to have very low sort of energy levels during this phase. So this potentially could be a whole week's worth of training. So 1 to 5 days could include Monday to Friday. If you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, potentially 3 days in that workout week, you're going to feel like crap. You're not going to feel amazing. You're not really going to want to go. So it can be quite difficult for a woman to keep going to the gym and keep motivated because they feel this way. Again, as a guy, we just don't experience it. We just take it for granted, really. There's not really much for us to think about, I don't think, at all, really. You just get up and go train, whereas women have got so much to think about when you're going through your cycle. Training adjustments, like if you're feeling fatigued, rest and recovery is best. Reducing intensities. So I'm not suggesting throughout this presentation that you change your workout completely, but maybe adjust what you were about to do. So if the weights have gone up recently when you're doing some resistance training, maybe cut back on the weights, maybe cut back on the total volume that you're going to do in the workout. Reduce intensity, reducing in volume. Maybe when you work out, you like do around about 45 to 60 minutes. Maybe on these days, you just do half an hour. So you still feel like you've done something, but you're not pushing yourself. So if you're not up for those workouts all, so mentally you feel quite drained, then just doing some mobility work, going for a walk, going for a swim, anything like this could massively help during this phase. It's about sort of looking after yourself and not being too hard on yourself in this phase. Next one, this is where you're going to start to have this rise in energy. So the follicular phase, I've put 1 to 14 days because, as I said, some people like divide this up into sort of like 1 to halfway through for the follicular phase, but technically going through from the slide before, it was 1 to 5, so it could be 5 to 14. Again, each one is slightly different for the women. So estrogen levels start to rise. So it means that you've got boosting energy, boosting mood, boosting motivation. You may want to go to the gym more. You may even want to do more exercise. So like your coordination improves, your reaction time improves, strength, endurance, your stamina, everything starts to get better. You'll start to feel more stronger, more capable, basically. You may even feel like you've got less brain fog. So you may feel a bit more mental clarity. So with this in mind, almost the opposite of the first 5 days, like just go big, go heavy, hit it hard, high intensity interval training, sprints, great for setting PBs. You've got better coordination, better mental clarity. So trying new things could be a great time at this part of your cycle. So after your period and you start to feel normal, you don't feel so bloated, potentially for the next weeks of training or the back end of the first week, you will slowly start to feel more like yourself. So this is a phase all the way up until mid part to really hit it hard. Next one is the ovulation phase. So 14 to 15. So usually 24 hours to 48 hours for depending on the woman. What we have is the high of the estrogen. So you have this peak. You'll also have an increase in testosterone, which is the male hormone in there, meaning that maximal strength, energy, endurance is at its peak. So if you go to the gym round about this phase, potentially you could be setting some really good PBs, almost to the point where you just feel like nothing can stop you. Just constantly go up in the weight. You just feel like I keep using the superhero Wonder Woman. You're going to feel like Wonder Woman during this phase. The word I put in there is unstoppable. You almost feel like you just can't be stopped. So if that's the case, just go, just enjoy it for that day or two that you feel that way. Just be really careful because of the changes in the hormones. Joint stability could be affected. So if you are pushing yourself, just make sure the technique is sound. What we don't want to do is push ourselves too hard because we get overzealous, we get really excited that we feel great, and then we start to injure ourselves. If you watched the last webinar, I spoke about how women's what's called Q angle, so from their hip down to their knees, their quad angle is different to a man. Their knees come down more into the center, not as obviously as pronounced as that, but it means that the inside of their knee has a little bit more pressure. So certainly, like if the joint stability is affected, they may be at higher risk of certainly like knee injuries or anything else. So just be really careful. Again, great phase for skill development. And again, it's just hitting that PB. After the ovulation phase, we're going to move into the luteal phase. This is the starting to slow down. So the back end, the last couple of weeks, you've got a drop in estrogen and a rise in progesterone. So again, remember from one of the slides before, estrogen is more that high energy, progesterone is more that calming, which can lead to a little bit more fatigue, a little bit more like mood fluctuations. Certainly as we're getting close towards the menstrual phase where you're starting to have your period, your mood may change. So that PMS may start to come into effect the sort of last week before your actual period. Potentially, you can still do really well in the gym, but you may find that as you get closer to start that cycle again, you will feel tired, you'll feel less motivated. Your appetite will actually increase. So your body temperature does rise during this phase. You will burn a few more calories. So it could be one of the reasons why you've got the munches. You feel like you can't be satisfied with the food. So just consider more moderate intensity rather than trying to peak. Just maintain what you've got. If you're feeling particularly quite like tired, then you can just reduce it again. But this phase, unlike the follicular phase and the ovulation part of your cycle, isn't the time to set PBs. So if you're going to the gym and every month, every time you train, you're always trying to hit it hard, you're actually in a way almost stopped because of what your body's going through that menstrual cycle. That amazing thing that women do, which is obviously there to produce babies. Again, men, we just don't have to do this. We don't even have to think about it, which is crazy. I'd hope to think that some men are watching this back, because I think men, husbands, like fathers, brothers, boyfriends, really do need to learn what a woman goes through to understand, like, physically how difficult and strenuous it can be, mentally as well, for a woman during the menstrual cycle. Again, I keep saying it, but we just get it so easy as men. It's amazing what women can do going through the menstrual cycle and having it affect them so much. Some women get away with it; they barely get any effects. But certainly from my own experience, I know from my clients, a lot of them have suffered and found it quite difficult. And until they started tracking their cycle, and until we start understanding where they are, they felt quite negative and quite demotivated about training because of that, really. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about, is tracking your cycle. Like, if you understand where exactly you are, or around about where you are in your cycle, it means that you're going to be able to optimize your training. You'll be able to adjust how hard you're working out. And then obviously mentally, as I keep saying, you're going to reduce frustration. You're going to feel like you're winning constantly rather than just feel like you're winning for a week or 2 weeks of the month. So it means you're going to stay motivated. And also, if you're feeling tired because you know where you are in your cycle, you can still go to the gym, but just to do a reduced amount, rather than just completely giving up and thinking, what's the point? I'm never going to be able to do the workout I've got set. So what is the point? Something is better than nothing. So again, understanding your cycle is going to help with that. There's loads of apps that you could use. There's loads of wearables as well. So like Aura rings, a Root strap, like Apple Watches, Fitbits, Calendar watches. Some of them have got inbuilt cycle tracking. Some of them you have to pay for apps, like an Apple Watch have a bit of both. Some you can just use apps like Clue and Flow, which are the ones that I've suggested. You don't have to use technology. I think I encourage technology because I like technology, but using like a wearable will give you body temperature, will give you like resting heart rate, will give you what's called heart rate variability, so your recovery, and you can see your highs and lows of your monthly cycle through those. So I always recommend that. But you don't have to. Clue and Flow, for example, will give you like the highs and lows, will help you track that, and will even give you an indication, a notification to say, this is where you are in your cycle. This is how you're probably going to be feeling at the moment. So they're also an educational piece of tech as well that will give you some details of what you should be feeling, or what usually you would be feeling, and maybe give you some suggestions. Sometimes they're a little bit patronizing. I know my wife uses, I can't remember if it's Flow or Clue, and some of the things are a little bit silly, but generally they're fantastic of helping women learn about their bodies. So these are the two that I recommend. I believe if you go back on the slides and click on Flow and Clue, it'll take you to the website, but that's what the websites are, the actual words name you should be typing in. They've usually, some of them are free, some of them have got a cost. I think a lot of them you probably find are free to a certain point, and then you've got to pay a little bit more. They're not as expensive as others, but they're really useful. If you don't want to use apps, just get pen and paper or something on your notes app on your phone will be more than enough. The fact that you're making a mental note or a written note of where you are. Okay, this is where I'm starting. So in 14 days I should feel like this, and in 20 days I should feel like this. It will massively help with your training, with just how you feel. I keep using this promoting that mental. The mental part is that, like, with exercise and nutrition, consistency I feel is the most important thing. Not hitting it hard for a short period of time. It's more like, can you repeat something over and over again, even if it's not the best, even if it's not the most. Consistency is the key. So understanding your cycles, like, I think is really important for that reason. So a little bit about nutrition now. So we're going to go through each of these phases. I quite like to keep nutrition and exercise really simple for both men and women that I train. I think sometimes we think about the tiny bits, the little minutiae things that could help. But generally, if you've got a good, healthy, balanced diet, you're drinking plenty of fluids, you're not drinking excessive alcohol, generally, I think you probably don't need to think too much about these. Certainly, if you're not eating a healthy diet that's consistent, then don't worry about these at all. These won't make a difference unless you're already eating a fairly healthy diet. But I will touch upon these very quickly. But most of this information here is just for you to go over and just read and make some notes. I'm going to cover this a lot more in the next webinar, which is purely going to be on nutrition, which is going to be super interesting. So if you remember from the menstrual phase, because you are bleeding, potentially you could be losing a lot of blood, meaning that your iron levels could be quite low. So for some women, they're going to feel really fatigued for that reason. So iron-rich foods are going to be amazing. So like leafy greens, red meat can help just elevate those iron levels. I'm not a huge fan of supplementing. I prefer food, but supplementing could help. Because you're feeling quite bloated, cramping due to those electrolyte levels changing, anti-inflammatory foods like omega-3s, fish oils, walnuts, chia seeds, these are going to help reduce inflammation. Hydration, again, just drink plenty of water. You are bleeding, so drink plenty of water, keep hydrated. Electrolyte drinks are great. The little tablets that you put into a glass of water are fantastic for this. But again, do you need to have this if you're eating a balanced diet? Probably not, but these things could help. Follicular phase. I think if you're hitting it hard during this phase, I mean, it's important to get enough protein like 24/7, like 365 days per year. But certainly if you're hitting the workouts hard, make sure you're getting enough energy, so complex carbohydrates and good quality protein to help you recover. And because you're stressing the body quite a lot, antioxidant rich foods like berries, leafy greens, colorful fruits are going to help massively. This is more about aiding your workouts and recovering after your tough workouts if you're pushing yourself. This only lasts for a couple of days, doesn't it? So it's not, this is probably the least important for this part of the phase here. It's 24 hours, 48 hours. So I just don't worry about it. I would think. I think you've probably got other stresses in life to worry about, more to worry about than this. And then lastly is your luteal phase. This is where you're going to start to have fluctuating blood sugar levels. So you are going to have more cravings. I'm sure you've probably experienced PMS leading up to your periods, that you start to crave sugary foods, and that's because your blood sugar levels all over the place. So like still carrying on with that complex carbohydrates, ensuring that you have a constant like energy source. What we don't want is more sugary based, more processed foods where we're going to have these spikes, which is just going to be exacerbated due to the rise in progesterone, which affects your blood sugar levels. Things like magnesium rich foods can help. B vitamins, if you're feeling fatigued, can also help as well, coming from these foods. You will burn more calories in this sort of phase here, like some women up to 300 extra calories a day based on the size and how their body works. So like having the odd chocolate bar is probably not gonna harm your weight management, and it may make you feel a little bit more sane. But again, I'm trying to give some specific recommendations during your menstrual cycle, but generally healthy diet, like 5 portions of fresh fruit and veg a day, lean meats, low fat dairy, plenty of water, complex carbohydrates, grains, porridge, those sort of things, whole grain products, like healthy fats, olive oil, things like fish oil, nuts, seeds, are all going to give you really the vitamins and minerals that you need. These are like the icings on the cake. You don't have to spend too much time on these unless you're doing a really good job in your nutrition as well. So that's it for the presentation. So hopefully I've enlightened you. Hopefully I've not patronized. It's not sounding like I'm patronizing. Again, sometimes I find it quite difficult, even though I've spent years like building up a knowledge bank of like data and information and experience of training many women and doing many courses. Sometimes I can feel a bit of a fraud sometimes, because I'm a man and I don't want to feel like I'm mansplaining to women. But hopefully today you've learned something about your cycle. You've learned maybe the phases, and also come to terms with you're not going to feel great all the time, and that could be because of your menstrual cycles affecting your body. Could be some other reasons as well, but it could just be your menstrual cycle as well. Now these webinars are now I've filmed them separately rather than doing it with the people, because it's just easier. There's less things to go wrong, and I can just relax completely with the people that are on the live webinars. The questions that I got from the live webinar were based on really nutrition and how to eat for energy wise, which we'll cover next week. But one of the questions they asked were about like tracking your cycle, and I think it was more about, should I make absolute changes to the cycle, not to the cycle, to your training based on the cycle. So as soon as you get to a point in your cycle, should you adjust your training instantly? And that's a no. So tracking your cycle and having an understanding of where you are is one bit of information. If you feel amazing during any phase, no matter if you're in a luteal phase or you're having your periods, then just go and hit it hard. If you're not feeling amazing through like the follicular phase, in where you should, in theory, be winning, but you just feel tired, then just adjust your training. So it's just one bit of data. I'm not saying that like you use an app, you use a wearable, and whatever the wearable tells you you should do, it's just there to give you an insight, a more physiological insight of maybe how or why you're feeling the way you are. But if it's the complete opposite of what you should be feeling, then adjust it around that. So there's a little bit of you doing your own thing as well, which is really important. They were the only questions that I got. Again, the nutritional questions people always ask, so that's going to be next week. I'm probably going to have like a ton. Potentially I could have like another half an hour just of questions on nutrition next week once I deliver the live webinar. So again, hopefully you've enjoyed this webinar today and you've learned some things. Again, you're going to have access to the slides. There'll be a transcript as well, which isn't always the best, but that's just like Google for you. It's part of me filming this, but the slides will be there for you to go back. You'll be able to watch this video back as well. But do reach out if you do have any more questions really about anything, any any health and fitness related questions for women and women's health. Next week, as I said, it's going to be nutrition, which is going to be based on weight management. So not so much weight loss, but more about like feeling great while also maintaining a healthy weight and potentially losing a little bit of weight as well. So it's going to be super interesting next week. And if you do need to get in touch, there's my details. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube, and that's my email and that's my number there. So do feel free to reach out. Until the next time, have a great day and a great week, and hopefully I shall see you soon on these live webinars that I'm delivering.